After a week-long sabbatical preparing for incoming family, and that's such a joy in my life when I prepare for incoming family visits, we're back here on Random Review, and the Cyber Battalion series is back as well. For the quickest version of this, I can explain for those who didn't see the previous reviews. This is basically what was supposed to be a spin-off line for Generations, so younger kids could enjoy our kind of Transformer characters in very easy-to-play-with toys that were very large for their price point. Fans didn't respond well when they did that kind of thing in the Beast Hunters line, rather. And they kind of got cold feet about a US release, which I still get people telling me if they were or weren't designed for a US release, but I've seen US suggested prices for them on Hasbro's US website, so I'm going to assume at some point these were meant to be at retail. Well, they didn't make it, but some of them were leaked to some markets, so we have guys like Starscream here. And this is a freaking enormous Starscream. That's bigger than some Voyagers from the time that I can imagine. Just to compare, that's your trigger happy. Now, I know wingspan is a great illusion for size when it comes to one of these transforming jets, but Starscream really does manage to be a very big vehicle mode for something that was only going to be $15 if it actually did get released. It's cast mostly in gray plastic, but we've got lots of colors going on in this one with red and dark gray, kind of gunmetal and blue. Lots going on because it's Starscream. He is a rather colorful guy. And of course we do have actual paint going on here. A little bit of black there for the intakes, blue and red in the striping. There's the Decepticon sigils, where they should be on the wings. A little bit more black for the intake, and a little bit of silver for the cockpit, which is a strange little detail to have just that part of the toy shiny. A little bit odd. Other than that, though, you can tell he's definitely taking after the G1 look. It's actually based closer to the Legends Starscream, and by that I mean the big one that came with Waspinator. So it's got a very similar profile to that, though the sculpting is completely new and different. You get tons of little panel lines all throughout the wings. They didn't skimp on detailing at all. I like these sections in here. I'm not even sure what they would be on a jet, but they kind of look cool, like circuitry sections that are just flowing through the toy. I kind of like it that way. You also have a ton of different details molded all throughout the back. You get the engines. Speaking of, thrusters in the back, fully molded on the inside. That's always nice to see. Toward the cockpit, you do have a canopy that's completely painted over in orange, but I don't know, I kind of disappointed they left out some of these sections that should have been like a different color, but it looks like they're molded red, which is odd, but hey, that's the thing, is it? Well, no, that's completely painted silver. Why did they do that? They do funny things in this toy line. But yeah, for the most part, it works pretty well. You even have landing gear that does come up, which is a little added detail on such a cheapo figure. I didn't quite expect it. Only downsides I would say to this is I don't like how the rear section is just black. Like, out of nowhere, it has that color in there. And the guns don't quite peg in close to the wing like I would want them to. That's going to be a recurring problem. First, we will go ahead and take those off, set them aside, and then we can commence transformation. This guy is what the Cyber Battalion series is all about. Pretty simple. In fact, you can see pretty much there's the robot. But that is kind of what they did for the Legend Starscream, so that's not unexpected. Gonna unpeg the arms from the wings and get them folded up. Lock those into the shoulder positions. We don't have to fold them down right away. We can leave them out just long enough so we can flip all this to the front. We get all of this here at the cockpit folded down, all tucked in to create the chest. Flip the feet down, split the legs, and you're pretty much done. Just get everything aligned the way you want. After that, we'll go ahead and peg his guns in, since Starscream and arm guns is always a thing. There you go. They're a little off color, but you got your null rays. That's always necessary for a Starscream. There we go. Behold, your Starscream in his full robot mode. Again, the Cyber Battalion series going very large with their figures, and that was the drawing point. Let's see, what toy do I have handy? Well, I got Ramjet here from the classic Seekers mold, so you can see just how big we were talking for something that was only going to run you 15 bucks at the store. That's pretty impressive, all things considered. And yeah, as something that would get a little kid playing with a G1 style Starscream, that's not all that bad, really. And it makes a neat little novelty for collectors like you and I. So let's take a look at the head itself. One thing I really have enjoyed about the Cyber Battalion figures is they really went all out on some of the head sculpts on these guys. I really like Starscream's look here. He's got some of the classic elements, but they've got a much sharper look to them here. They've kind of been cleaned up and kind of sleeked out, so his helmet has a much fiercer look to it. I really like it. It works really well. For whatever reason, I don't know why, for something that was supposed to be pretty cheap, the designers really went all out on the new stuff that was produced. Starscream looking, again, very much G1 in this form. All the colors are in the right place. A little few exceptions, we'll get to that. But for the most part, his big shoulder pylons are there, his wings to his back, guns on his arms. This is very much the G1 Starscream at a scale that we don't normally see him at. It's usually a deluxe that he gets relegated to. I like that all the original details are there. Those intakes on the chest completely molded in. Very, very nice. You go all the way down to the midsection where, again, the sculpting detail is pretty exceptional for something that was so cheap. Though, of course, sculpting means little bits of plastic taken out. So that actually kind of makes sense for it to be on a cheaper figure like this. You can get sections like this where that middle rectangle section on his legs is represented, pretty much covering everything. Fully molded hands even. Very, very impressed by this guy. I genuinely like the look of him. He does a few oddities. That silver in the cockpit that we saw is also migrated down to his thighs of all things, so those are completely painted over. Chest is painted over. It seems like a strange use of paint. I mean, especially when you've got things like the legs that are completely, you know, that dark gray, black, gunmetal style color that really doesn't look right on this Starscream. I so wish it was the gray of the rest of the toy and it completed the look. It's like we got 90% of the way towards Starscream and then couldn't quite finish it off. I get the feeling they just did it because, hey, the guns and the head have to be molded in that color, so we need something else to be in that color just so we can, you know, justify the mold. I probably just would have saved all that overcoating on the thighs and the cockpit area to just paint the legs gray. I think it would have come up looking like a far better toy. Now, that all said, there's a few things about the toy that we should mention. For starters, of course, it is part of the cheapo line, so lots of hollowed out sections. You can see huge gaps in the legs, huge gaps in the arms. The thing is, like, the toy itself does feel like it was meant to be played with by a little kid. It feels like it can take a hit without breaking. It's weird in that it feels light, but it doesn't feel breakable, if that makes any kind of sense. Even molded the back a little bit. That's kind of neat. So, what about articulation? How does this guy go? Well, let's see. The head does rotate left and right. That's always good to see. Universal shoulders, which is a very nice thing to find in a toy in this style. You have elbows that are a little bit loose because you can see they're just clipped in to a couple mushroom pegs, but they do work and they do get beyond 90 degrees. That's neat to find. Hips, yep, hips all work. And they're in this faux ratcheted joint stance, so they actually do have some hold to them. That's nice. Nothing in the knee, though. And he does have this weird thing in the feet. There's no ankle tilt on these kind of cheapos, but he does have a very loose hinge here in his ankles, which is a big downside. It means if he's too far forward, too heavy in the front, he can have a tendency to tip over as the feet collapse. But generally, because of that big backpack, he's not going to have any kind of issue with that. Though I say big backpack just because of the wingspan. It's actually a pretty clean toy, all things considered. I can even fold down these wings if I wanted to clean up just a little bit more, but it actually clutters his robot. exposes a few more bits here, so it's kind of your option. Speaking of, you can also fold the wings back a little bit. They actually hinge. I'm not even sure why it wasn't necessary for the transformation. I assume it's just to give his arms room to move if you want to pose him, which is kind of cool. I will also say that, again, the stem for the guns is a little bit too far out for my liking, but that's also because these do, of course, fit into his hands, which means among the Cyber Battalions, he's one of the few who actually does have an accessory that can go into those hands. Now, of course, they fit 5mm posts, so if you have your favorite Starscream and you want to swap weapons or give him something else to hang on to, he can do that pretty well. So at the very least, you have that. So that, my friends, is Cyber Battalion Starscream from the ill-fated Generations Cyber series. He's a perfectly serviceable toy for his size and for his intended price point. I think he stands perfectly fine. Aside from some oddities in color, he does a commendable job. He's a nice transformation. Yes, limited articulation, but if it's meant for a kid, it's not a huge deal. And again, the construction is nice and simple to the point where it doesn't feel like it's going to be very breakable. It feels like a kid could play with this and I'm not going to be worried. Which is great because I have little cousins coming, so guess what they're going to get to play with. But still, it's another one of those examples that makes me go, wow, this line really might have turned into something cool if it had just been given a chance.